Hello, welcome back, Pigskin Paisanos. This is G-Man here with my trusty sidekick and companion, Paul. And we're going to go over two games today for starts and sits, week 2 of the NFL regular season. The first matchup we're going to go over is the Arizona Cardinals at the Baltimore Ravens. Paul, why don't you start it off and tell the people out there about any players that they might want to know about who are currently injured?
Okay, so to start off, really for the Arizona Cardinals, really just some guys that are missing that are backs on defense and some offensive linemen. We already know the line isn't great as it is already, so even if they were all healthy, probably doesn't matter anyway.
Great Wall of Arizona.
The line's pretty bad, but with the backs that are out, again, we saw how Lamar Jackson lit up the Dolphins, so maybe he keeps passing that.
Gets a repeat, five more touchdowns.
I don't think so, but also on the side of Baltimore, Jimmy Smith will miss multiple weeks, so you want to keep that in mind. He's a pretty good back on defense, and Kyler Murray, again, we're going to talk about the starts and sits. And so,
all right, let's get into first. As we said, it's going to be the Arizona Cardinals at the Baltimore Ravens. Last week, the Baltimore Ravens only gave up about 185 passing yards and 22 rushing yards, if that's right. They had a couple sacks, only gave up 2 points, a touchdown, interception. So with that said, context matters. It was the Miami Dolphins, who could be the worst team in NFL history at the moment. Sure. But how do you see some of the key players that people want to start for the Arizona Cardinals against this matchup?
So, I mean, you have to start David Johnson. But at the same time, you got to temper the expectation that he's going to break out and have a crazy David Johnson game. We might see a kind of David Johnson game like last year where he performs like an RB2. But he's getting so much work. You saw how he had a 27-yard touchdown last week, so he's definitely gonna get work in this, whether it's in run game or passing.
Yeah,
game.
He had 18 rushes last week and had 7 targets, and he caught 6 of them. So obviously they're gonna get involved, especially like last week where the Arizona Cardinals were down for most of the game and then rallied with that big comeback. I could easily see the same kind of scenario happening here. Not that they rally for a comeback, but that they could be down by a sizable margin.
Right.
And if that's the case, then David Johnson's obviously going to get targets out of the backfield.
So what I would say is, start David Johnson. However, he might just give you maybe 10 points because I don't see him having over like 100 yards in scrimmage. I don't see him going over 100, so maybe Johnson needs a touchdown to really provide that RB1 value for you.
What do you think about Kyler?
Kyler Murray, 54 passing attempts last week, went 29 for, with 29 completions, 308 yards, 2 touchdowns. But again, he's facing Baltimore. I would say kind of like David Johnson, Kyler Murray, start Kyler Murray, but just temper the expectation. I don't think he's gonna have those same kind of numbers. But
probably not.
Yeah, but he might.
But again,
he might run the ball a little more.
They could be, playing that garbage time. Let's try to make it look like we didn't lose as bad as we really did.
Right. Yeah. So what I would say is start both Johnson and Murray, but just don't expect a high level of play out of them because they're facing one of the best defenses in football.
Let's move on. How about Christian Kirk? Last week, kind of a quiet week for him. Only had 4 receptions for 32 yards, but had 12 targets. So we talked about this in other videos, guys. When it comes to how do you want to value certain fantasy players, you want to be looking at, of course, talent matters, but you also want to look at scenario and you want to look at volumes and opportunity. So when we look here at last week that Christian Kirk had 12 targets, it kind of shows you that out of 54 passing attempts by Kyler, that basically 1 out of 5 we're going to go over to Kirk.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Kirk in this matchup?
Yeah, so I mean, Kirk kind of like our man Johnson, Keyshawn Johnson, both getting, double-digit target share. So you got to put him in as a possible flex play. But again, you're facing Baltimore. So in my opinion, G-Man, I'm sitting Christian Kirk, and I'm sitting Keyshawn Johnson.
Well, yeah, we were gonna get on.
I'm sitting both though. I'm gonna sit Kirk as well, even though the dude got 12 targets. I just think because he's not the number one option, Baltimore is gonna be a stingy defense. So I'm sitting both of those guys. But
all right, let's move on to the old man. The old man, but still seems timeless. Larry Fitzgerald last week. Yep. Had 8 receptions for 113 yards, 1 touchdown on 13 targets.
Yeah.
So this could be a huge bounce back year if everything goes how, they wanted it to go for him last season.
Yeah, Larry Fitzgerald really shocked me in this game. I mean, like, we knew that he would be better than last year. I mean, last year was just so bad.
The whole offense went about as bad as it could have.
But in that game, man, he looked like his old self. It was fantastic. He was catching everything. 8 of 13, 113 yards and a touchdown. He's a guy that I would definitely start in this game. He's probably the only wideout I would start.
What would you put him? Wide receiver 3?
Oh, maybe,
probably.
Maybe, yeah. Because of the matchup.
Yeah, I'd say he's probably down on your depth where you drafted.
Right, but I would say in a good matchup, maybe a 2.
Yeah,
in a good matchup. But because it's Baltimore, maybe a 3 with upside. Who knows? Because I think he's going to get the main looks out of that passing game. So,
all right, let's move on then. We got for starts, we're gonna go. We both agree on Kyler Murray, David Johnson, and Larry Fitzgerald. We both agree on sitting Keyshawn Johnson. I would say start Christian Kirk. Paul says to sit him. So we'll see how that one works out. Right. All right, moving on to the Baltimore side of things for their offense. Last week was a really weird week for Lamar Jackson because
let's talk about Lamar.
He's always gonna be probably a really good fantasy play, but what he did not only in fantasy but in real football was pretty crazy. I mean, to only have 20 passing attempts, but to somehow get 324 passing yards, 5 touchdowns,
and only running the ball 3 times when he's known for his legs and not his arm.
Oh yeah, it was averaging like 15 plus rushing attempts.
It was a strange game. I mean, if anyone expected that, then you're a genius. Really. So in this game though, again, you're facing the Arizona Cardinals defense, not a good defense. Guys hurt on defense, Patrick Patterson, all these guys, that are hurt on defense. And so we expect Lamar Jackson to have another good game.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona last week, I get Matt Stafford's a different quarterback, but Arizona quickly led up 385 passing yards and 116 rushing yards between, Stafford, Anderson, and Carry-On. So I think Baltimore overall is just a better team than Detroit. Maybe not always in a fantasy sense, but in a real life sense. And they could do a really good job of just playing clock management with Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards running the ball, defense shutting down that offense. So, yeah, I agree. Lamar Jackson's definitely a start for me.
Yeah, so
one quarterback league or 2.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So since Garrett mentioned the run game, Mark Ingram, the second, had 14 rushes for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. Just a monster first game as a Raven. You are starting Mark Ingram, especially against this defense. Maybe as a flex play, I would say consider Gus Edwards. As a flex, maybe G-Man.
I think I would sit him. Yeah, I'd sit him.
Okay.
I think he got all that work just because they were already up, I think, 42-10 against the Dolphins going into the second half, so that's why.
I'm going to say sleeper. Sleeper flex. Sure. He had 17 rushes, didn't do a lot with it, but again, if they're up in this game,
that's why
it's going to be a similar kind of game script.
If you're going sleeper pick with him, then I think you have to kind of think that this game could get carried away like Baltimore gets Miami.
It could,
so if that happens, then they will give him plenty. Let's move on. Wide receivers, the rookie, Marquise Brown. Yeah. Only had 5 targets, but with that 5 targets, he had 4 receptions, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, I worry because it's a lot. It's like really weird to expect week over week. Like, 5 targets, he'll get you a freaking, 18 plus 30 points in a PPR format. Right. So, but what do you think about Marquise in this in this matchup here against the Cardinals defense.
I mean, it's really hard to sit him after a game like that.
I know.
Especially against the Cardinals defense. So I think you have to start Marquise Brown for now. I wouldn't put him more than a wide receiver 3 flex play because, you just don't know what you're going to get. It's week 1. Don't expect the Ravens to have games like this where they're putting up 1 million passing yards and all these scores, but for now,
these first 2 weeks are good matchups for them. Yeah,
exactly. They're playing a bad defense that have a lot of injuries. So expect Marquise Brown to get a share of targets and hopefully another score for you.
Yeah, I think in the other wide receivers here, I don't think either guy, whether it's Willie Snead the fourth or Miles Boykin the rookie. I mean, Snead had 3 targets. Boykin had 1 target. I get it. It was a weird game where Jackson only had 20 passing attempts. I'm sure his passing attempts will be slightly higher in this game, so it obviously could provide a different target share for these guys. But for now, I don't even know if they're really worth even thinking about until they show you some.
I wouldn't even do it.
I think lastly, the guy we'll get into that's fantasy relevant is tight end Mark Andrews.
Yeah,
I mean, had 8 receptions on 8 targets, 108 yards, and a touchdown.
Yep.
You're going to start him. I mean...
I
mean, saw what T.J. Hawkinson did to this defense, Arizona's defense last week.
Yeah.
Why can't Mark Andrews do something?
You got to start him. Jackson, I mean, even though Jackson had a really good game passing, I expect him more to throw those short kind of, routes and everything. So I see Andrews, of course. I mean, 8 for 8, caught every pass, had over 100 yards and a touchdown. So that Jackson likes him in that game. Again, guys, and like some of you might have drafted Eric Ebron, Jack Doyle, Vance McDonald, guys that kind of pooped it, in week 1. And so if you want a better option at tight end, go with Mark Andrews. Why not? I mean, I think he's a better option than many tight ends right now. So you're starting Mark Andrews right now.
So we'll go with it again. Lamar Jackson, whether it's a 1 quarterback league, a super flex 2 quarterback league, you're going to start him. Start Mark Ingram the second as your RB2. Paul here would say sneaky upside start for Gus Edwards as a flex, depending on game script. I'll say sit, but I see where Paul's coming from. Another player we didn't really touch on was Justice Hill, but I think for now you got to sit him. The talent's there, but we got to see it first. Start Marquise Brown as your wide receiver 3 flex. And Willie Snead the fourth, Miles Boykin, not anything you're thinking about. And you're going to start Mark Andrews as your tight end. All right, moving on now. We're going to get into the second game for this video. That's the Los Angeles Chargers at the Detroit Lions. Paul, why don't you start us off with the Los Angeles Chargers offense?
Okay, so the Chargers had a pretty good game last week from an offensive standpoint. Rivers, your man, the quarterback, went 25 for 34, 333 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So you're starting Rivers. I mean, the guy is a consistent QB year after year. He's a gunslinger. He loves to throw it. So have to start him up. Also, Austin Eckler really involved in the passing game, getting that Melvin Gordon type of treatment.
Yeah.
12 rushes for 58 yards, a touchdown, and 6 of 7 targets he caught for 96 yards and 2 touchdowns. The dude scored 3 touchdowns. So they are feeding him that football just like Melvin Gordon. Again, I had a chance to get Eckler in round 7, and I didn't, and now I'm regretting it. So start Austin Eckler. He seems like he's getting a good workload. Justin Jackson, the other running back, I would sit him. He's just not getting the same kind of workload yet, but I would stash him. No, I mean I have him on.
I wouldn't drop him yet.
Yeah. No, I keep him right now. I mean, he was okay. He only had 7 touches in this game and didn't really do a lot with it. But again, so you're starting Eckler, you're starting Rivers, and let's go to the wideouts. So
yeah, let's start. Keenan Allen, who is just probably one of the very best wide receivers in the whole NFL. Phillip Rivers and him are a great 1-2 combo.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen had 10 targets, 8 receptions on those 10 targets, 123 yards, and a touchdown. And now with the news that we heard about, we were going to touch on these players shortly. Yeah. We heard about Mike Williams. He's dealing with a knee injury, not really sure what the status is of it right now. He's questionable, may not play. And we just heard the horrible news recently about Hunter Henry.
Hunter Henry's going to be out 6 to 10 weeks, apparently.
It's a while.
He's gone.
So,
so he's done. So
doesn't really
Keenan
leave you
Allen
much.
is going to get peppered with targets. We're expecting double-digit targets.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, has to get that. And so, yeah, I mean, the only way that Keenan Allen doesn't do well is if they blow out the Ravens, which I mean, sorry, the Lions,
The Lions,
which is possible. They might blow them out, you know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, you have to expect Allen to do well. You're starting Keenan Allen.
So yeah, as we touched on Mike Williams, he didn't really have much of a week anyway. Only had 2 receptions on 3 targets, 29 yards. I mean, because of the injury, you're going to sit him. Another player there.
Travis Benjamin. Tell me, Garrett, what do you think about Travis Benjamin? He's going to slide into that number 2 role probably because Mike Williams is not there. What do you think?
He's had some big games in the past here and there, right? So he could be this like really sneaky play that you're not thinking about because, you know, as much as we talk about Phillip Rivers peppering Keenan Allen with so many targets, like they can't just go to Keenan Allen. So
it's going to go to Eckler as well.
Keep your eye on Benjamin because he'll have those big games here and there.
Yeah.
I'm going to say sit him in this matchup against Detroit because I think Detroit has an okay defense. They only allowed, I know it's Arizona, but they only allowed 308 passing yards.
Okay.
And I just don't think that Benjamin is someone I would say with confidence. Like, I'm not going to get that cute with it.
Okay.
And Hunter Henry, obviously, he had a decent game, four receptions on 5 targets, 60 yards, but since he's going to be out, the backup, Virgil Green. Let's just leave it at that. I'm not.
Come on.
So anyway, but what do you think though? Their defense. This could be another play that you do against those against the Detroit Lions.
So the Chargers, from in week 1, gave up 190 passing yards and 206 rushing yards. So from passing standpoint, they might do a pretty good job on Matthew Stafford, but man, 206 rushing yards and a touchdown is a lot to give up.
And only got 2 sacks, so it's pretty
So
what do you think? Because they're playing, they got Carry-On, they got CJ. Do you start their defense?
Oh, it's a tough one, Garrett. Why are you asking me this in front of everyone? I don't know if I would start. I don't know if I would start the Chargers defense.
Okay.
I just don't like the amount of rushing yards. That's a lot of rushing yards to give up. And, is Matthew Stafford going to go from almost 400 yards passing to under 200? I don't think so.
No.
So I think you sit the Chargers defense on this one, sadly. And since we're talking about the Lions now.
Yeah, let's move on to their offense.
Let's move on.
Matt Stafford.
Matt Stafford, let's talk about him.
Quarterback for the Detroit Lions went 27 of 45 at 385 passing yards. 3 touchdowns. That's a really good game.
Great game from Stafford.
As we just pointed out before, the Los Angeles Chargers last week against the Indianapolis Colts. I know that Jacoby Brissett's obviously not the same quarterback as Matthew Stafford. They only allowed 190 passing yards. So
I don't know.
What do you think about Stafford this week?
I think if you're in a 2-quarterback league, you start him. If you're in a 1-quarterback league, maybe look at other options just because I don't trust Matthew Stafford so much.
I hear you.
Last year he was up and down.
Well, he had that lower back injury that he's dealing with all year.
So, I mean, I don't know. They might be playing from behind in this game as well, so maybe Stafford is a decent play. It's kind of a fringe spot for me. I'd say in a 2-quarterback league, start him. In a 1-quarterback league, sit him.
Cool. All right, moving on for the running backs. We got Carry-On Johnson and C.J. Anderson. Carry-On had 16 attempts, 49 yards. C.J. Anderson had 11 attempts, 35 yards. Obviously, not that great of production for either one, but they did have a combined total of 27 rushing attempts. A pretty high number, and we were just talking about how the Chargers gave up over 200 rushing yards.
Yes. Context is key. You gave up 206 rushing yards. That makes me
70 of them were like
that
more
makes
than
me
Mac alone.
salivate if I'm a Carry-On Johnson owner.
Right.
Maybe this is the game that he can finally showcase his skill set, and maybe the coach can put a little trust in him for once to stop playing C.J. Anderson.
But he probably will, though. That's the thing.
Who is Frank Gore 2.0 right now?
So what would you say on both players? Like, what's your opinion on
Carry-On and
CJ?
I would say you start Carry-On as an RB2. And you sit CJ. I don't like CJ in this. I just don't want to start him ever, actually.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Just saying.
All right, so moving on, we got Kenny Golladay. Surprisingly, he did okay, I guess, from a fantasy because he probably in a PPR league got you something like 14.2 points. But Only had 4 receptions, 9 targets,
not much
42 yards, and a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think? High target share.
So it seems like the Lions are spreading the ball around a little bit. You know, we
Jones, Amendola, Hawkinson.
We saw other guys that got the workload here. I would say you can't really sit Kenny Golladay at this point because he is the number 1 wide out there. So I would say start him, but you know, he's more of a wide receiver, maybe
3 on the matchup?
To me. Yeah. He's not a great play, especially because the Chargers were actually pretty good against the pass last week. So
you know what, T.Y. did have a good game. So if you look at it the same, so that's the number 1 of that team versus this number 1.
So I would say start him and hope that he maybe has a big game. But again, more like a third option.
Moving on now, we got Marvin Jones Jr., another somewhat fantasy relevant player to think about. You had 4 receptions on 4 targets. 56 yards, so it's like an okay game.
Yeah,
but again, I
just don't like how he was 4th in targets. I don't like that.
Yeah, that is strange.
I don't like that. You know, and I started Marvin Jones last week, and I was kind of disappointed. You know, his numbers were pretty mediocre. I would say sit Marvin Jones. I'm sitting Marvin Jones over because I have Michael Gallup, which I'm so happy about. But I'm sitting Marvin Jones this week.
Okay,
so
I agree with that.
Danny Amendola went off last week. He caught 7 of 13 targets for 104 yards and a touchdown. Where did this come from? Where did he do this in New England? I don't remember Danny Amendola having a game like this. So it seems like he's a safe blanket for Matthew Stafford. And because of that, I might consider starting him, at least as a flex. Why not?
I mean, with Paris Campbell, what did he have? Like 1? He only had 1 target.
Yeah.
So we can't. That would have been the player that we could say, all right, well, how did Paris Campbell do against this Chargers defense? But with only having 1 target, we can't really compare how Danny Amendola was in the slot, similar skill set, how he would perform.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to just base it on week 1 and how much do you buy what happened on week 1.
I mean, guys, 13 targets is a lot of targets.
That is.
So kind of like that, like Jamison Crowder role or whatever. I just see him getting, you know, a decent amount of targets. And guys, when it comes to targets, you have a floor, and if you have a floor, then it's a safe pick. And when it comes to flex, you don't want a guy that's gonna just bust it entirely and have 0.
What would you say, another wide receiver 3, or would you say a flex?
I'd say a flex play. I wouldn't put him that high. But flex play. And let's move on to the stud rookie tight end, T.J. Hawkinson.
T.J. Hawkinson had 6 receptions on 9 targets, 131 yards, and a touchdown. Great debut for the rookie.
Insane debut.
But again, going back to how the Colts were able to do, Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle both had some really poor games. So does that, again, do you think of that as a comparison where you think, okay, well, you know, TJ was able to have a very good game against the Arizona Cardinals defense, but do you think now that TJ is going to have a good game against the Chargers when, you know, we're not comparing Paris Campbell, who's a rookie. We had Jack Doyle and Eric Ebron, 2 pretty good tight ends, veterans. And yes, as we said, the Chargers only allowed 190 passing yards. So what do you think about TJ? I mean, you're probably going to have to start him just because of that.
I mean, I would say
but
this.
The matchup could be tough.
Yeah. I would say don't expect a crazy game out of TJ, but you got to start him. I mean, the guy killed it, you know, in week 1, and
very talented.
And about the Colts, I mean, they don't have Andrew Luck in there.
I know.
And they did well when Andrew Luck was in there.
I thought that Jacoby would have used like Doyle and Ebron more,
but that's not the case. So I mean, I wouldn't say like I would say that with Matthew Stafford in there, with that kind of chemistry, start him. You know, why not? So you're starting T.J. Hawkinson.
All right, so let's go over it again. Detroit Lions offensive players. Matthew Stafford. Going to start him, right? Doesn't matter. 1 quarterback league, super flex, 2, or would you rather?
Well, I mean, I said to sit him in a QB1 league because I think he's playing a pretty good defense, and Matthew Stafford has that tendency to give you letdown games. So I would say start him in a 2 quarterback league, but sit him in a 1 quarterback.
Kerryon Johnson.
Start him.
RB2. C.J. Anderson, sit. Kenny Golladay, wide receiver 3, right? That's what we agreed to. Marvin Jones, sit. Danny Amendola, probably a flex. TJ Hawkinson, start him as your tight end, but don't expect
a
the
crazy game.
Right.
But if he does have a crazy game, then you better invest in TJ Hawkinson. Okay. So
all right. So that's going to be it for the videos and these matchups here. Week 2, the Arizona Cardinals at the Baltimore Ravens and the Los Angeles Chargers at the Detroit Lions. This is G-Man here.
This is Paul.
And we're signing off. To the next one. Have a good one.